Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Let's Talk Change. Thrilled to have you here today at the beginning of Women's History Month with an incredible lineup of speakers and content. It's taken a lot of work, but we're so proud of it. And at the outset, I want to thank McKinsey and Company, who have been invaluable support to Let's Talk Women on a pro bono level. And this is Stacey Rausch, Catherine Maddox, John Moran, Samay Bansal, Adjite, Priscilla in the tech. You'll see some of them up front, you'll see some of them behind the scenes, or you won't see them, but they're very much there powering our session. And before we get to what on earth is Let's Talk Women and our agenda, let me backtrack for a second. I'm Rohini Day, the founder of Let's Talk Women, as well as the restaurateur behind Vermilion. My prior background was at the World Bank and at McKinsey and Company. I'm no stranger to any of the ceilings. We've seen them all. Glass ceilings, what I deem the gastro ceiling. Is progress happening? Yes, it is.
Going inside.
But change is glacial.
Oh.
Change is glacial. And the reason I say this, I will not go into the statistics. We know it all. Funding for women entrepreneurships, whether it's SBA loans, VC dollars, equity funds, the women in C-suites, women leading Fortune CEOs or in policy. We know all of that. This is despite the best of intentions, unlimited resources being thrown at this issue, DEI, marches, Me Too, and yet, why is it that ours is the one country where women do not have equal status under the Constitution? The ERA is not ratified. The US is the only country with a propagation tax, which is a penalty on women for motherhood, the only advanced country to not support its women. It's the only country where out of developed nations, where we rank 30th in the world. So there's something wrong with this picture. I am not naive. Women leading in alone cannot change the equation. It takes policy, huge change there. It takes the environment, which is our industry, our corporations, and top-down leadership there. But there is some element that we can control, and that's within our power. And that's what is the impetus of our summit today. It is about galvanizing change within ourselves. And so before I move on to that, let me share what Let's Talk Women is. This is, I will call it an action movement of women restaurateurs and entrepreneurs in food and drink. We started this a little over a year ago. I founded this to literally boost ourselves, boost each other. We are all women owners, employers, operators. Everything we do is out of hide to cross promote each other, to ensure our businesses don't die, and to boost our top line, bottom line, media, and visibility. Why do we do this? Because women owned restaurants in our industry or businesses tend to be much smaller scale than we would like it to be. And no amount of manuals and guidelines from our industry is changing that. So this is our action out of hide by us to support each other. And this is a model we believe can be leveraged across other sectors. It can be leveraged within businesses as entrepreneurs. I'd also love to share our co-hosts, which is 43 leading women restaurateurs around the country who nourish the 13 cities that Let's Talk Women is. We are 600 of us, growing by the day. 14th city opens very soon. So we invite all women owners in food and drink to join us, be part of the conversation, be part of the change. We invite corporations to partner directly with women entrepreneurs to back us. We are consumers. We have the pulse on what our consumers want. We invite policymakers to involve us in dialogues for change. Enough about Let's Talk Women. You'll hear more about us later. And I'd love to now also thank incredible sponsors who backed us right from the beginning. The first I'm going to mention is our national champion, Cisco. If we can move to the agenda. Our national champion, Cisco, and you will see Adrian Trimble, who's going to be moderating the Meet the Changemakers panel. They've backed us consistently through the year. There is also the International Food Manufacturers Association, who showcase us to all their corporate members to directly work with us. There's Alta Beauty, which realizes that working directly with women business owners makes sense across sectors. And there is Toast. So thank you, all of you. And now, without much ado, let's get to the incredible agenda that we've crafted for you. The first, there are 4 elements to our Let's Talk Change Summit. The first I'm thrilled about is Men on Change. It drives me mad or when our women's forums do not leverage our male allies. And there are so many of them. So unless we hear their perspectives on what really is the problem and how do they see it and how can they help us change the problem, we are preaching to the choir. So here we have icons, and I'll be introducing them later, but we have Danny Meyer, we have Jose Andres and Andrew Zimmern talking to us about their perspectives. Jose Andres, we will be sharing a recorded segment at the end of this summit because he is on the border of Poland and Ukraine, serving more than 10,000 meals a day with World Central Kitchen. And that is a cause that we strongly back. So thank you, Jose, for your time and for being with us by recording. Next, we have a transformational woman speaker. And the intent here is to revolutionize change within ourselves. That is the whole impetus of this summit. That's the part that we can control. The ability to ask, be seen, and be heard. There is so much that we can change and by raising a generation of fearless women and fearless daughters. And Claudia San Pedro embodies that. Not only has she embraced change as an immigrant from Mexico, but she's changed from the government sector to corporations, and she's changed from being in finance to operations. So let's hear how she's done it.
We are in.
The third component is by McKinsey and Company. And again, I'm deeply grateful to them for sharing this with us. It's their Remarkable Women Change module, where we have Joanna Barsh and Natasha Catalino, who are the leaders of this program, founders, they're TED speakers, renowned authors, and they've literally crafted, they'll share, but this is a days, weeks, workshops, year-long transformation program that they've distilled into 30 powerful minutes for us. So can't wait for that. And to end, we have incredible women entities that target enabling and empowering women in our industry. We have next up Women's Food Service Forum, who do a lot for executives and professionals in our industry. And then we have MAP, La Dame Escoffiers, and Let's Talk Women, who target entrepreneurs in our industry. This is moderated by Adrian Trimble, Vice President of Cisco, massive ally of Let's Talk Women, and a straight shooter. So that is going to be the tenor of our panel. And without more ado, let us get to Men on Change. And I'd love to invite Danny up here with us for welcome, Danny.
Thank you, Rohini, and really great to be with all of you. Thanks to your leadership, and thank you also so much to the sponsors that made this possible today. You know, when you first invited me to present today, I will acknowledge that I asked myself the question that you've already answered, which is why would you want a guy up here? And it dawned on me that this is our journey together. We can't do this without each other. And so I'm really grateful for this opportunity. We're learning together. We've learned together for many, many years. And I want to share some of my own journey as an illustration of what I hope we can do actively to support a crucial mission. Why is this such a crucial mission? It's not just because it's the right thing to do. It's that if any of us truly believes in hospitality, and that the meaning of hospitality is something that exists when the other person truly believes that you're on their side, well, that's kind of the definition of ally in and of itself. And for too long, it's been clear that either through ignorance or a lack of awareness, or the thought that good intentions alone were enough, we have not satisfied or come close to satisfying the potential to be active allies. And I would say that my own personal journey illustrates this point. I was a first-time restaurateur at the age of 27 years old. And in the same way as I know that many first-time restaurateurs, whether they're men or women or whichever race, it was almost impossible for me to find any kind of outside funding. And so I know what that feels like. I haven't experienced that difficulty since 1994. And I know that many people on this Zoom call are still experiencing that difficulty today, but not just because you're a first-time restaurateur, but primarily because of your gender. And I'm aware of that, and I know that that's something that needs to change. In those early days of being a restaurateur, I was not incredibly conscious about the kinds of microaggressions and biases that I think I've learned a lot more about after all these years. I was proud that we would be a restaurant at Union Square Cafe, which, by the way, was the one and only restaurant I had for the first 10 years of my career, that would actually welcome women into the dining room, welcome women into our kitchen. And as crazy and as ignorant as that may sound, you have to understand that in 1985, our industry was dominated by restaurants that began with le, la, or il. They were the bastions of French chefs, French maitre d's, Italian chefs, Italian maitre d's. And in those kitchens, it was not only 100% male, but it was quite hostile, even male on male hostility. And there was no one in the dining room who was a woman, because the excuse was that women cannot carry trays. And I knew that that's not the kind of restaurant I wanted to own. I did not want to own the kind of restaurant where the chef was an angry person running a kitchen based on fear. And we always had a pretty good cadre of women, both in our dining room and in our kitchen. And that said, I can also tell you that over many, many years, had we been keeping statistics as we now do, and as we now post on our Union Square Hospitality Group website, I would probably find that we had not done nearly a good enough job in terms of promoting women to top jobs in leadership. And I'm talking about as we grew our business over time. Our industry, and I would say some of this was really advanced through the advent of reality TV shows in food, and some famous books that came out, glorified the macho kind of hostile environment that made it, unfortunately, this was kind of the next generation from the French hierarchy that you would find in the kitchen, where fear was the currency. And we seem to do our own American version of that throughout this country, where it was all too cool, unfortunately, to, brandish drugs and bad language and in some cases, really awful behavior. And I'd say that the big learning that I have had along this journey over many, many years is that there are two extremes with nothing in the middle. You are either an active foe to advancement, or you're an active ally, and that anything in between. And this was my own journey, which I believed was that my intentions were never anything other than what I believe were very positive intentions. But intentions are almost like being an ignorant foe. Good intentions on their own are like being an ignorant foe. And you're either an ally or you're an active foe. And so we have had, I think, a really incredible opportunity over many, many years. And I'm happy to say that we're making progress. I'm never satisfied. I'm not satisfied today, but I'll try to share some of the things that we have done. The first thing was to take a page out of a book I wrote called Setting the Table, that was what we call the 5 A's of mistake making. I think it's a mistake to say that you are about hospitality and not be on everybody's side, to only be on some people's side, and not understand that some people are disadvantaged to begin with. And so you have to go further if you want to be on their side. And so the 5 A's of mistake making, the first one is to be aware. And if you're not aware, you're nowhere. I have had experiences that have been painful learning experiences where I was not aware of things happening in my own businesses. And if I'm not aware, I'm nowhere. The second A is to acknowledge it and to acknowledge your role in it. And I've done that on many, many occasions. I hope that those occasions are fewer and fewer as we consistently act with training with our staffs, so that everybody goes through trainings on understanding what a microaggression is. Everybody understands that when we hire people, there is no disparity with compensation. Everybody understands that when we work with a supplier of any type, we are actively thinking about both gender and racial equity. And the third A, by the way, is apologizing. And once you're aware and you acknowledge, I think it's important to apologize. And that's something that's been part of our journey as well. Fourth A is acting. And I shared a couple of the things that we are working on and have been working on for several years to act. And the fifth A, which I think is incredibly important for any kind of mistake, and I would say especially a mistake that may be a vestige of our industry historically, but if we are leaders, it's our issue to address, is to apply additional generosity. And so when you find that you have ground that you need to make up, you better really make up that ground in a big, big way. I'm going to just end with a couple quick thoughts because I know that people are excited to hear from Andrew right now. But along our journey, we have really believed that it's what's most crucial is to give people a voice that is heard, that is respected, that is not interrupted, and that people have a seat at our table. And so we started with our board, and our board of directors at Union Square Hospitality Group has women on it. It was a mistake to only have one woman on our board, because I think to ask anyone to be the voice for everybody is unworkable and unfair. So we have women on our board. We have an investment fund, which we call Enlightened Hospitality Investment. And 6 of our investments are companies that have been founded or co-founded by women. And that's what we call putting our money where our hearts are. It is a journey, and journeys can be long, but as long as we're pointed in the right direction and aware of our role as leaders, and humble enough to acknowledge that not only do we not have all the answers, but that it's our responsibility, if we are going to be active allies, to each day listen, learn, and act. Thank you.
Danny, thank you so much. You actually cut me off before I was about to blow your trumpet for you. So for those of you who are from our industry, you know Danny Meyer very well. I mean, his portfolio of Union Square Hospitality Group restaurants is iconic. In fact, it is his tabla and modern that drew me to the world of restaurants and made me forsake the world of McKinsey. So Danny owes me an apology for that. But this, apart from that, author, setting the table, as well as founding Shake Shack, incredible change, which is now close to 500 locations, half of them global. IPO'd that, chairman of the board. I mean, it is, if that is not revolutionizing change, it's incredible. So thank you, Danny, for sharing your thoughts on us. Can't wait to dig deep after we hear from Andrew, and I'd love to invite Andrew up with us. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can indeed. And so I want to thank you, Andrew, for joining our conversation today. We celebrate the fearless men who are part of our discussion. And you have been amazing. I've reached out to you thrice for panels and you've never said no. So either, as I mentioned, I owe you royalties or you owe me a PR fund, one of the two. But
I think, well, thank you, Rohini. I really appreciate it. And I'm thrilled to be here today. Like Danny, I had the same reaction. I was like, what, why, why me? But I will tell you that, you know, as Danny said, you know, you're either for this or you're against it. There's no sitting in the middle. And the reason why I do a lot of the things that I do is that I don't believe it's okay to sit on the sidelines regardless of what the issue is that you believe strongly about. I want to make the world a better place, and I think it's an ignorant and failing viewpoint to think that gender equality is something that we can just ignore and let, as you said, that glacial evolution take place. You know, I'm 60 years old. I was born into a rigged system. I'm the son of a well-to-do white couple growing up in a home of privilege in New York City. I had a very strange introduction to this business. I entered the profession as a teenager, working for two women that owned a restaurant in East Hampton, Long Island, called The Quiet Clam. And there were women in the kitchen, and there were women working, you know, in the dining room. And my mother was an early activist in New York City in the 60s and 70s. So I had a lot of opportunity to have good role modeling in front of me. Two of the women that I worked with, and for, I should say, early in my career, before my own alcoholism and addiction took me away from the industry I loved for a couple of years, were the late Leslie Revson and Anne Rosenzweig. And they educated me on what it was like to be an ally to anyone who's been marginalized, pushed down, and underserved, or living in a caste system of any kind, both here in America and beyond. What I was struck by when I left kitchens owned and operated by women was how different and how unempathetic, how dysfunctional, how angry they actually were. Going off to Europe after working in Leslie's kitchen and Anne's kitchen, coming back to America and working in the restaurants of New York City in the late 80s, it was sort of astounding to me. And they simply weren't as effective. So very early on, I saw with my own eyes that a restaurant where everybody, regardless of their gender, their color of their skin, their belief system of any kind, if there was mutual respect for those people, they were much more functional. And you know, one of the things, Rohini, that you asked me to think about for this was, for women in our industry, virtually all, as you put the mega groups, are male owned. So what do I see as the problem? And I actually thought that was the problem. It's not just male ownership, it's the male domination in so many of those countries Danny referenced the difference between having one woman on the board versus having several. And I think that that's really the biggest issue. Yes, we have over the last 10 years seen leaders. I was just at an event in North Carolina, so Ashley Christensen's group down there comes to mind, of women-owned and operated restaurant groups in particular, that are approaching all of their business modeling internally and public facing to be a more productive, and their entire team practically is women led. And we're going to have more formidable. I'm sitting outside an airport, as if you couldn't tell. I'm going to let that plane sort of cruise by for a second. Obviously, we're going to see more formidable companies grow. And we're going to therefore be able to increase the number of typical activities that have been talked about before, like mentorship and investment. But I think the real focus, and for me, with other issues I tackle, out in the advocacy world, it really comes down to making change where the money is and making change on Capitol Hill as well. Because you use the term glacial. I've studied social justice movements over the last 60 years. It took 35 years between the time we realized that seatbelts saved lives before it became a law. It took 28 years after we realized that cigarettes were not good for you before we even got a warning label on a box, right? And then very quickly after that, the inability for those companies to advertise on TV. So these glacial social justice movement is part of the issue. And I think the way to circumvent that is not to wait for the culture to shift, right? Slowly over time. We have to accelerate change. And the fastest ways to do that are by changing laws. That means at the municipal and state level as well, not just on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. I'm going to wait for this plane to go over. My apologies. But the vital area where I think that we can do the most benefit with those laws is by increasing access to money. That's everything from the form of tax rebates to favorable loans from banks, anything that we can do to accelerate that. When you reminded me that the ERA has still not been ratified, I felt something roll over in my stomach. What kind of country are we that would not do that? So, what can the men of our industry do in terms of near actions to be meaningful allies? It's to devote our resources and influence and to stand side by side, because this has got to be a we thing. It has to be a we thing. I was reminded last night, by my better half, that putting responsibility solely on the shoulders of women in this industry is ludicrous, and it's insulting. Men have a responsibility to stand up and say, hey, in my case, I'm 60. I know my very existence has been part of the problem. So what is it that I do the same things that Danny is doing? We've adopted handbooks in all of our companies. We've accelerated leadership within our companies for women. My main business, FoodWorks, which oversees my other two businesses, is solely populated by women. I'm the only male in our group. So we have to unrig the system. And by the way, I did not do that on purpose, but I did, in fact, make sure that we had seats for everybody at our tables. So we need to forget about changing the system, which takes too long, that glacial social justice movement system, and instead start to share the playbook from other industries that have been successful. And that's lobbying Washington, that's changing laws, that's increasing access to money, and it is pushing for that together. as a founding member of the IRC, one of the things that I was proudest of when we rolled out our opinion piece and exercised influence on the RRF, which was the SBA program that sadly only got $29 billion instead of the $70 billion that was applied for to help restaurants, was to proactively put women-owned businesses and businesses owned by people of color and businesses smaller than those doing, I think it was $1 million a year in total revenue, at the front of the line, not just letting everyone get in line together. And I think it's that kind of activity that is so vital for us to be aware of and to work hard for. Danny, interestingly enough, I'm not surprised. I've adopted a lot of his playbook for life in my, how I go about my day-to-day business, personally and professionally. And he's been a tremendous friend and mentor to me. But I learned last night in talking to some people that the real change, if you look at some companies, big companies that are doing the right thing, is about leadership and setting the tone. We have it's largest electronics retailer in the world. I'm assuming they're probably Fortune 100 US company named Best Buy, which is headquartered in Minneapolis. And it actually made it actual policy that women were going to be 50% of the board and C-suite. They adopted a say-do mandatory policy that they were going to do what they say and have timelines and deadlines for them. And it's talked about internally all the time. And they set out to proactively hire more women into those roles. And that creates an incredible opportunity for everyone. Male-dominated, male-owned restaurants and food companies over the last several generations created systemic inequities, dangerous environments, brittle internal economies, and so on. Were some of them enlightened and successful? Sure, of course they were. I'm talking about the vast majority, though, were not. And we need to get those businesses to commit to level the gender playing field right now. And I guarantee you, if we can figure out ways to do that, internal campaigns, external campaigns, changing laws, municipal and statewide, and at the federal level, those systems within restaurants will change for the better. And I think the last thing that I would say about laws is a great quote that I read from my friend Elizabeth Strader. I've spent a lot of time with the United Farm Workers, telling their stories for different TV shows that I've been engaged with, in a series of documentaries called What's Eating America on MSNBC. And I met Elizabeth. She is the United Farm Workers Director of Strategic Campaigns. And she says that the tipping point has not reached farms, and I extend that to restaurants and food businesses as well. And she has said that the arsenal on the side of the employer has gotten bigger, and we are still working with archaic laws. And I believe that is the case. And we need to have change at the municipal, state, and federal level. And that's where I think a lot of our focus needs to be. And I thank you, everyone, for allowing me to share some time with you today.
Andrew, thank you so much. You too cut off the brilliant introduction I had for you. So let me do it now that you've spoken. But everybody knows you for bizarre foods, and who's to define what's bizarre is my opinion. But hey, that, and I admire your intellectual heft for what's eating America. You're one of the few restaurateurs who goes beyond our world to explore immigration, to explore humanitarian, farm workers, UN World Food Program. You're an ambassador, you're an advocate. There's so much you do that your resume is outright exhausting. But we are thrilled to have you. And I'd love to invite Danny on screen as well. Danny, that was incredibly thoughtful. I couldn't agree more about you are either an active foe or you are an active ally. Being a bystander doesn't cut it. So totally get it that a big part of the ball is in the policy court. but you are here as icons and men in our industry. How can you help us make change not glacial, but clipped and rapid? Can we not? I mean, I will throw out two ideas, but I'm putting you on the spot here. How can you galvanize our industry? We don't want more manuals. We don't want guidelines and webinars. We don't want tinkering around with $5,000, $10,000 grants. They're pitiful and insulting. Maybe it might make a dent, but not really. How can we, like, can we not, if 10 of you mega restaurants were to get together, could we not go to a Jeff Bezos and get a fund for 100 million or a 200? I mean, I'm just throwing stuff out. What can we do? Have I effectively silenced you?
Do you want to call on either of us? Because I don't think either of us wants to, you know, men can mansplain to each other too. We don't want to do that. I'll try to share a couple thoughts. I think we need to be the change we want to see. I'm not saying that a few $100 million couldn't be put to good use, but maybe because I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, which is the show me state, I'd much rather do it than talk about it. But on the other hand, as a leader, and Andrew does this better than anybody, if you have the platform, you actually need to talk about it a little bit more. Look, we have, in terms of being the change we want to see, I spoke about our board of directors. We have 8 C-level positions at Union Square Hospitality Group. Of those 8 positions, 2 of them are white men, 6 of them are women. And I will tell you that we are a better company because of that. Being the change we want to see means promoting actively and championing people's careers. And sometimes what that means is again, acknowledging and being aware and understanding that the thing that I was taught when I first got into business, which is, oh, as a leader, as a manager, you need to have an open door policy. That is nonsense. That's the most passive aggressive thing any leader can do. We actually have to leave our open door in our own office and go out and understand what needs to be said, but is not being said because people are either afraid that they don't have a platform to say it or express it. So we have to create more opportunities for people to express themselves and then champion people and advocate and mentor actively people who have not had those chances historically. And then the only other thing I want to add right now is that when it comes to public policy, I don't have any question that you know, when you talk about this country and how far behind we are in so many different ways, childcare and having active childcare is the single number one, like with everything else, 50 yards behind it, reason that when you look at whether you call it the Great Resignation or the Great Reshuffle or the Great, whatever you want to call this thing, where we've had a hole in our pocket for longer than just the 2 years of COVID, where we've lost all kinds of people. And then we have failed to fill the funnel with enough amazingly talented people. The proportion of women who have elected to leave this industry is embarrassingly larger by a lot than men. And I have no question that the absence of childcare is a paid childcare. Why in the world would I pay to commute to be away from my family when I can barely make enough money to pay for the person who's looking after my kids? Why would I do that? I would just not make that choice. And so guess what? Not a big surprise where we are right now.
Danny, I couldn't agree more. All of the policy issues you raised are amazing. We're almost out of time, but I'd love to hear some words from you, Andrew. And to be continued, we'll have Let's Talk Change Part 2, but to be continued. Andrew, anything on you on out of the box things we can do within our industry that the male reciters can use their influence, resources, and heft on?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily out of the box, but I would extend out from what Danny said. We have to remember that the number one employer in the country of single mothers is the hospitality industry and restaurants in particular. The same with first-time job seekers, last-time job seekers, new Americans. those leaving jails and institutions. It's a very, very special group. So to advocate at the state and federal level for, you know, mandatory childcare, for paid sick leave, for a higher minimum wage, I could go on and on and on. Those are the places where real big change is going to happen. Rohini, I know that, you know, the idea of somebody writing a really big check certainly could help. But I think from a long-term beneficial effect, it would be far greater to enact a group, you know, a set of workers' rights laws in this country that actually allowed for people to return to the industry they love. People aren't leaving restaurants because they don't like the act of hospitality. They're leaving the industry because they can't afford to stay there.
Thank you so much, both of you, for coming on. And I will now hand over to my colleagues for the next component of our program. Thank you again, Andrew, Danny, and we celebrate you for joining us and being allies.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine Maddox. I'm an associate partner at McKinsey, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today. I'm very excited to introduce our next speaker, Claudia San Pedro, the president of Sonic and the head of limited service at Inspire Brands. Now you can see a few, and truly just a few, accolades on this page, but what got me excited about having Claudia here with us today is her impressive history of leadership at Sonic. So Claudia joined Sonic in 2006 as treasurer after spending 10 years in the public sector. She held multiple roles, including CFO, prior to becoming the first female brand president at Sonic. And since taking her role at the helm, she's led the brand through a remarkable period of growth and transformation, including the sale and integration with Inspire Brands, several technology overhauls, and the launch of a new brand identity. It's under her leadership that Sonic has become one of the fastest growing restaurant brands in the US today. And that's even more impressive when you consider the challenging industry dynamics over the last 2 years. And what I imagine is only a big hill to climb to make that amount of change happen at a nearly 70-year-old brand. I haven't had the chance to work closely with Claudia, but I did ask someone on her leadership team, you know, what makes Claudia really remarkable? And I'll share just one thought briefly with you all. So she said, one of the things I love the most about Claudia is she openly shares her experiences as a first-generation immigrant from Mexico. The way she eloquently speaks about her experiences, the challenges and opportunities in her life has inspired not just women, but generations across the Sonic system. I've seen the hope and inspiration in their eyes and in the eyes of our crew members as she tells them that they can be whatever they want to be. So it's for all of these reasons, I'm thrilled to have you here with us, Claudia. Please join me in welcoming Claudia.
Thank you so much, Catherine. That's an amazing introduction. I could not have asked for anything. I'm just speechless. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled for a variety of reasons. I'm thrilled because it's the restaurant industry. I am incredibly thrilled, moreover, because this is a multicultural international crowd, and that makes me so happy, because as we think about all being allies and supporting each other in this industry, it takes all of us. So thank you for having me.
Great. And Claudia, there are so many questions I could ask you. You know, I think maybe we'll start with one just about your journey. So as you think about what's driven momentum for you personally, and what some of the big inflection points have been in your journey, I'd love for you to share a little bit with the group today.
Absolutely. So you mentioned one of them, which was first generation immigrant. We came to the States when I was 2 years old. My parents were in their late 20s, didn't know the language, and started over. And while I didn't appreciate it as a child, I think as an adult, quickly understanding the sacrifices they had made for us to get a better opportunity in this country, and giving a sense of obligation and duty and respect for what they had done for us, and making sure that we were paying it forward. So one of the things that drives me is this incredible sense of pride and responsibility as I think about this great country and the opportunities it has, and making sure that we provide those opportunities going forward. The second thing that drives me, quite candidly, is I was put in a situation in my early 20s where I was completely broke and had to provide for family. And never having been in that situation, it was a horrible situation to be in. And I can say, I was raised in an economic level where I didn't have to worry about our family paying the bills. Everything was taken care of. To be thrust into a situation where I didn't know how the bills were going to be paid, I had never experienced that kind of stress. And so one of the things that drives me now is what I learned from that time period is I never wanted to be financially dependent on anyone, and the importance of, particularly for women, economic power. And Andrew mentioned this, the single largest population in poverty in the United States are women with children, single women with children. And so the key to the future is economic security and power and success. And that's one of the reasons I love the restaurant industry is, while we need to do so much more. I see that example over and over. So those are a few of the things that drive me.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. And one of the things I think is so unique about you, Claudia, you've had the opportunity to watch this movie from the public sector, from your time in corporate America, and also I imagine through the eyes of your crew members and all of the Sonic franchisees. So as you think about, all of the challenges, where would you place the bets to get started on kind of moving the needle across this equation?
Well, here's what I would share. And I was going to share this because as I was thinking about the theme of this conference and transformation and how do we begin that transformation within ourselves, what really resonated with me was there was a 2000 movie by the name of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon by Ang Lee. And the movie is an amazing movie, but really the phrase stuck with me, and it's really been more powerful for me over the past 5 years. And I want to share this with the audience because I think this is where we can begin to move the needle. So the name Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is a literal translation of the Chinese idiom, which describes a place that is full of talented or extraordinary people who remain hidden, undiscovered. Simply means talented or extraordinary people hidden from view. The idiom is used to remind people, don't underestimate people. And when I think about where we are as a gender, it is that we are hidden, we are underestimated, we are undervalued. So as we begin to make the shift, I think a big piece of what Rohini's done today is what can we do to start to ask the questions and make sure that we're being heard. And from that perspective, I would tell you my shift and my journey has been from at times feeling like I'm a sitting duck where I can be this defenseless target. And for me, the visualization of, I don't want to be the sitting duck. I want to be the crouching tiger. I want to be that pouncing animal that's ready to take advantage of any opportunity, to ask questions, to probe, so whether it's asking why not me, why not them, where can we take that opportunity? So I think as we look to shift the needle, a lot of it continues to be, how do we find ways to take risks, get uncomfortable, but in a way that's authentic to ourselves? Because as we all have different styles and voices, some of us are strident, some of us feel comfortable being quiet. It's equally powerful, whether you're quiet or loud or strident or work within the system to get change, but making sure that you have that stance of the crouching tiger, identifying your hidden talents and making sure that you're in that crouching position, not a sitting duck. And I don't know if that resonates with anybody, but that certainly has been something I've been thinking about, particularly over the past 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I like the reframe. I think that's what I'm going to steal from you. And on that note of kind of reframe, so, you now have the mindset of being the crouching tiger. How did you learn how to ask for what you needed throughout your journey? And I think we hear this, quite frequently from women, that it's hard to know how and when to ask and how to be heard, whether it's for funding or new opportunities or credit. Just curious some of your reflections and maybe any advice you have for women in the audience.
I think first I would tell you it was out of desperation, needing to find a job and provide for the family. I wish I could tell you it was out of courage and voice, but at the time, I think initially out of desperation. I also think I have a natural inclination towards intellectual curiosity. So if anyone works with me, they know that I ask a lot of questions. So that part comes a little bit naturally to me too. I think the bigger piece when it comes to opportunities, particularly when it becomes to access to capital, career opportunities, it is getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. So if your style isn't to make waves, how do you push yourself to ask questions from the standpoint of, I'm seeking to understand, I'm seeking to find not just a pathway forward for me, but for the future of whether it's your daughters, whether it's your fellow workforce and your female friends. And for me, what's been really powerful is not framing it in, what am I doing for me, but what are the implications for women behind me, whether that it's my daughter, whether it's women I work with, because if I have to summon the courage to be able to do this for future generations, if I can't summon the courage at times to do it for myself. So I think depending on your style, figuring out what you can call upon to summon that courage.
Great. And, you know, I mentioned in my intro, you've led Sonic through a period of significant change, and it's been really exciting to see, you know, all of the growth across the brand. I imagine this has been quite challenging, you know, sustaining this change across a franchise brand that's almost 70 years old. And any reflections or learnings on, you know, what you did to make change stick?
You know, I don't know if I always say it's not just me, and I have to give incredible accolades to our team. We have an incredible team. And from the get-go, I think I have had the opportunity. There's a phrase that's often used that you're not a leader if no one's following you. And so I have to say that it really has been, as we've gone through this tremendous sea of change over the past 5 years, through an acquisition, through a pandemic, through new technologies, it is making sure that I'm being respectful and honorable of all the hidden talents that are among our teams, and being empathetic when I need to be, being a little, I think, you know, pushing, challenging people to go beyond their comfort zone. But I think the single most important thing is challenging myself to make sure I'm listening at the right time and understanding the perspective, because it's only through putting myself in every person's different shoes, whether that's a franchisee's, whether that's a drive-in team members, whether that's a team member at our support center, that I can really fully begin to understand what their pain points are, what their opportunities are, and then together we can start to fashion out strategies to grow from there.
Great. And I have two more questions. I did see one coming through in the chat, so I promise I will get to that. So as you think about some of the actions corporations could take to catapult more women into leadership positions, and I know you've spent a lot of time on this topic through some of your work at Best. I'm just curious, you know, your thoughts on what are some of the actions that you think is important for corporations to take?
I think a few things. Andrew and Danny mentioned them. It has to come from the tone at the top. And I've been extremely fortunate to have allies and leaders who, and let me be clear, because I think this is important, and I think this gets lost in a lot of the noise on DEI. It is about DEI, but more importantly, it's about building high-performing teams and getting the best talent at your table. And when you exclude half the population, or even more than half the population, because of reasons of race, ethnicity, or gender, you are not getting the best talent. And I think if we can reframing that for corporations as it's an imperative for the future of your company, and setting that tone and recognizing that, that's where it begins. Not from, at times it is a moral and ethical drive and cause, but more than that, it's about getting the best performing teams at your table. And I think the other piece that's critically important, and I've seen this change happen in various organizations, it is by every team member saying to their supervisor, saying to management, hey, it is important to us that we have a top performing team that reflects all diverse skill sets. And whether that's diversity of background, gender, race, or ethnicity, it's important. And if I'm good talent, and if you want me here at the table, then I need you to expand your view of how you view talent.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. This is actually someone from Sonic, or one of your Inspire employees, and she's asked, what is the #1 piece of advice you have for women in coming up in their careers?
Ooh, so many pieces of advice. You know, the #1 thing I would tell you is give yourself grace. I think what we are constantly doing is judging ourselves so harshly. And women have the additional burden of not only are we oftentimes looking out for our careers and providing for our families, but we're also worrying about childcare, which shouldn't be our burden alone, but it is at times. And so I think the #1 advice I can give you is give yourself grace and seek other allies and women. I can't tell you what comfort it has been to find other women, because you will see that you are going through the same thing. And so to give yourself that grace that opportunities will come to you, maybe not at the time period you want them to, and it may be overwhelming at times, but you can do it. And to find that, literally find that crouching tiger within you.
Great. Thank you so much, Claudia, for taking time out of your day to join us here. It was great to have you with us, and thank you. I think I'm turning it over next to my colleague, Stacy, as we continue on with our program.
Thank you, Catherine.
All right. Thank you, Claudia, and thank you, Catherine. I'm Stacy Haas, I'm a partner with McKinsey, and I'm so thrilled actually to introduce you to my colleagues, Joanna and Natasha. Joanna Barsh is a 40-year career with McKinsey, one of our first senior partners, and has been a huge inspiration to me. She's also the author of several books on centered leadership and was the original founder of that work. And Natasha Catalina is now the leader of our Remarkable Women program, and she's had centered leadership, which is a key piece of that, as sort of her rock and anchor over the last 12 years as a mom, a career woman, and as someone who's lived in, I think, 6 countries now in 12 years. And so we're thrilled to just share this program on centered leadership and Remarkable Women with you. So Joanna and Natasha, thank you so much for being here.
Joanna, you're on mute. Joanna, we can't hear you yet. So Joanna, while you're looking for the unmute button, let me take a moment to tell you about the amazing work that Joanna did founding Centered Leadership many years ago. It was this question of why is it that some women succeed and others seem less fulfilled? There you go, Joanna. You want to pick up from there?
I do. And now we have 29 minutes because of my remarkable technology skills, but it doesn't matter. And you know why? Everyone on this call already is remarkable. So what we're going to do is actually dive right into the worst of times, the most challenging of times, with the help of Tiffany in a little bit, and give you some wonderful tools that you can use to move forward despite these challenges. So let's start with the problem of why some women do rise to the top, and some women are crouching tigers, as Claudia said, who are remaining hidden. Well, it's because of 5 things. We know this because we've interviewed hundreds of leaders, both men and women. And as Natasha will tell you, we've done a lot of analysis on this. It starts with meaning. When you know your strengths, when you ground your day, your week, your year in strengths, and because you are driven by purpose that motivates you, whether it's making the money or whether it's getting to the top or whether it's making sure that your daughters and your sisters and your friends have room to grow, you will succeed. Framing is all about, in the moment of upset, knowing that there is another possibility and asking those questions and learning to adapt. Connecting, trust is something that women bring to the table. And because we know how to build trust, we build community. Engaging, you know, women's voices are different, obviously, than men's, but in many ways, women have ownership. And when women take risk, we actually accomplish great, great things. And in a different way than men. We could talk about that later. Energizing, the last one, frankly, is the hardest one. It is the hardest one because we burn out. We're living in a world of COVID and we burn out. But when we learn recovery, we can be in flow, which means being at your best more of the time. And why would you start this journey with us? Because it will increase your leadership. It will actually help you have a greater impact, and it will lead to more satisfaction in life.
Yeah, I mean, I would invite you, just as you sit here with us now, to reflect. If you were to score yourself on a scale of 0 to 10 on how successful you feel right now, what score would you give yourself? And then maybe write another number down. What score would your biggest supporter, your mom or your best friend, give you? And then one final question for you to reflect on right now is, how fulfilled do you feel on a scale of 0 to 10? Because this centered leadership work can really boost both your actual success, also your perception of your own success, and your levels of fulfillment. And we are going to just dig into 2 of those today. The one that Joanna mentioned about managing difficult situations, and the one about taking bold steps forward. And there's 3 pieces to this work. The first, it always starts with self-awareness, which is, how aware am I of my thinking patterns and my behaviors today? And as we build our self-awareness of the way we're behaving, can I make different choices in the way I approach situations? And then finally, are there some tools or practices that I can use to help me make different choices each time I face another challenging situation? So we hope you come away with greater awareness and a few tools to practice so you can make different choices each time you face a challenging situation.
And how do you do that, Natasha? How do you do that when there was 2020, then there's 2021, and now even in 2022, there's shit, if I can say that, happening in our worlds all the time. A few of these questions about funding and keeping our restaurants open and getting our businesses started. Let's face the brutal facts. Let's start with our reality, which is COVID, which is inflation, which is the great resignation and getting enough staff to help us in our businesses. But then there's our outside world. There's politics, there's social unrest, there's Russia and Ukraine. The list is mind-boggling. And so for those of us who are languishing, who are grieving, who are burning out, how do we do this? It takes a toll. You are a leader. It takes a toll on you too. Let me tell you a story as we get into this and understand the first tool. Here I am. I live in Arizona right now, and I was on a hike with my husband. I'm not a hiker. I'm not a good hiker. And we took this long hike down into this valley, down a hill to a beautiful waterfall. And for some reason, I got to the waterfall and I began to stress out. And so I looked at my husband and said, 15 minutes are up. We need to start hiking back. We have to get back before it's dark. And my husband said, no, we don't. I want to stay here for an hour and a half. And I thought, we can't stay here. So I huffed and I yelled at him and he yelled it back at me. And I didn't know what was happening next. I just stood up and I said, well, I'm leaving. And he said, well, at least take your hiking sticks and some water. But you know, I don't like to take direction from anybody. Sometimes I'm a crouching tiger who's not crouching anymore. So I just picked up my sticks and I did not take that water, silly woman. And I started to huff off. and I huffed off and climbed this crazy hill and got myself back into this valley. And I was steaming. There was a black cloud above my head. I was so mad. And then something happened. I almost stepped on this guy. He was a very rare, it turns out, tiger snake, a rattlesnake, a venomous snake, a poisonous snake in the desert. And I jumped back and I went back, I guess, 100 feet. And I don't know what happened. I started to scream. And I screamed and I screamed and I screamed until a little voice in my head said, no one, Joanna, is listening. No one can hear you scream. No one is coming. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? I let it all happen then. In that moment, every feeling that I was feeling just made its way through me. I started by being shocked and I was confused. I don't even know why I was angry. But then I remembered I was angry at my husband. I was mad as hell at everything going on around me. And then I became afraid. I was afraid of the snake. I was afraid of COVID. I was scared for my family, for myself. I was in a panic. I'd lost all my work. I was worried about money. And then I became ashamed because I'm privileged. Why am I worried about those things when people are living hand to mouth? I felt very guilty. I felt guilty that I wanted my old life back when my current life is so good. And then I became deeply, deeply sad. I was sad because my old life was gone. And after the sadness, I felt empty. And yeah, disappointed in myself. How about you? As you think about a recent time when you experienced something that was very upsetting, it could be about work, it could be in your everyday life. Let's go there just for a minute. Trust us, just for a minute. Close your eyes. Natasha will do this with me. And go back to that moment of upset. Could have been yesterday. Could have been last week. Could have been 6 months ago. Put yourself in that moment and feel your surroundings. If there are people around you, what's happening? How are you feeling? How are you feeling physically? What are the feelings that are going through you? What are the thoughts in that moment? Maybe write them down. Take a deep breath in and an even deeper breath out. One more. As you too allow yourself to welcome those feelings in and let them go. Natasha, show us how.
So all of you, all of us, to be sitting here today, have experienced these moments and have the tools within us to reset. And so what are the ways that you do this in these high stress moments? So right now, as I am bringing myself back with you from remembering the last time I lost it with my kids, I'm feeling my feet on the floor. I have my cup of tea here, which just taking a few sips from helps me to recenter and ground. what are the physical ways that you reset in an intense, challenging emotional experience? And it's not only physical tools, there's also mental and spiritual ways. Looking out of my window at the snow-covered back garden and the beautiful trees, asking myself the question, what do I most want in this moment? And I guarantee you it's not kids crying in the car on the way to school. What is my bigger purpose for doing what I do that I'm trying to achieve here? What can I find that's funny about this situation? And so I invite you to reflect on what are the methods that already work for you some of the time? And if only you could draw on those more of the time. Or indeed, what do you want to try from this list that maybe you don't normally try? What works for you, Joanna?
So I, as you know, am a highly emotional person. I remember in the moment the red flags that work for me. So even before I do this to recenter, I think to myself, oh, my heart is beginning to beat faster. I can feel my emotion rising up. And that's when I take 4 deep breaths, as we started to do earlier. And that's when I warn myself that this upset is coming. And I tell myself, you are strong. You will fall down potentially, but you always get back up. And when you get back up and feel love and feel that the person who may have triggered you is doing it out of love or not even thinking about you at all, that helps me actually, because then I realize that person is not trying to hurt me. I have this. I have this. That works for me. So now that we have practice, and you're probably pretty good at this because you know you're remarkable already, you have everything within you that you need. We have this tool for recentering, for moving forward. How do we move forward to be a change maker, to be a transformational leader boldly? Natasha has a very cool exercise for us with Tiffany, and I'm pretty excited to see what happens next.
Cool. Thanks, Joanna. Before we bring Tiffany on the stage, let me just set the scene for you here. So many times in our career, we have a vision. We have a vision for something big that we could create. Or maybe people come to us with opportunities, or we sit here going, gosh, I wish I could get more funding. How do I go about doing it? And there's opportunities in front of us, and yet we sit paralyzed. I don't have the courage. I don't have the guts to take this bold step. I'm so exhausted. I don't know where to start. I don't dare do it. And so we're going to explore, how do we take that bold next step forward? And let me start with a brief story of my own. So it's about 3 years ago. I've just arrived in Switzerland. It's my 5th country in the last 10 years. I've got 4 kids that I'm settling into a new school. I have this job that I'm trying to hold down, and I'm continuing to travel back to Turkey each week to serve my clients there. And amazingly, a colleague comes to me with a really big opportunity, a project that, standing here today and looking back, was one of the biggest projects that I've done in the last 3 years, and a real make or break moment in my career. But in that moment, I stood there with this incredible opportunity being offered to me on a plate, going, oh my goodness, there is no way I can take this project. And I thought of all of the risks, the fears, the concerns, the reason why I was not qualified. I didn't know my stuff well enough. There was too much risk that I dropped the balls in my home life. What if I didn't create a good connection with the client? All I could think of was the downsides, the risks to me of taking this opportunity. Now, never did I create the mental space to think about the upsides, the opportunities, the amazing things that could come from taking this bold step. Nor did I think about the downsides of not taking the project, of staying in the small world that I was operating in with my current set of clients. And I'll be really honest, it took a really big kick up the butt from my husband to make me take the project. And It's the only reason I did it, with huge insecurity and discomfort. And of course, it ended up really well. What I didn't do at the time was this thought exercise, which is helping us to structure how we think about big opportunities when we want to take them, but don't.
And that's because, our brains are trained, as Natasha, you're showing us, our brains are trained to look at the downside. And you're retraining your brain when you start with the upside.
Yeah. And all the science supports this, doesn't it, Joanna? There's actually research done by 2 Nobel Prize winners, Kahneman and Tversky, that say we have an asymmetric approach to risk, which says we'll buy lottery tickets, we'll spend money on these tiny potential upsides, but we also spend money on insurance because we're so terrified about downsides. So our brains are actually wired, and they protected us this way to think about the downsides, but we need to short circuit this. And so let's live demo this. Would love to introduce Tiffany to you and do an exercise.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Tiffany. It's so wonderful that you're joining us. So I had the pleasure of meeting Tiffany yesterday and was blown away in our short meeting with the amazing things that you have already accomplished in your career as, I'm going to say, as a celebrity chef, as a female entrepreneur in the restaurant and food industry. But Tiffany, will you share with me now, what is your current challenge or opportunity that you face?
Well, you named it. So I'm glad we had that chat. I think mine has been just kind of ownership and acceptance. This title of celebrity chef, for me, it's been what does that come with? What does that mean? Does that make me an inauthentic person? Do I become, what other people want me to be? It's been a hard kind of journey to accept that.
Great. And I noticed you're already doing such a good job, Tiffany, of exploring the downsides of this opportunity. So the opportunity you have in front of you is calling yourself a celebrity chef, branding yourself a celebrity chef, and going out there with that as your thing. So let me ask you this. What is the upside to you of boldly embracing being a celebrity chef?
Yeah, so the opportunity is definitely grow my network. Being able to let people know what I do outside of my community that does impact my community. All the amazing things that we've done over the past couple of years, especially feeding people during this tough time, over 30,000 meals, and being able to hire and give people jobs, being able to give people opportunities in our cafe to grow their businesses.
Great. So growing your network, what else?
Funding, huge thing.
Yes. What else?
Yes. Let's see. Being bolder, representing, women in my community, women who look like me, being able to take the next step, women in my industry, Black women in my industry as well. So all of those things for sure.
What else?
More confidence in myself. More confidence in myself.
So I could go on with that list, and I'm going to encourage you to do the same later. But now let me ask you a different question, Tiffany. What is staying still for you? So not taking that bold step, maintaining your current network, your current description of yourself, your current status. What is the downside to you of just staying your course?
I think the biggest downside is still just chasing opportunities, chasing funding, chasing clients, just stagnant, not growing.
And what's the impact on you of chasing?
I will say that the impact of chasing is, oh, that's a good question. Thank you. You stuck me there. I feel like I've always chased. I've always tried to reach further opportunities, and I'm always pushing for more and more and more, and not really living in the opportunities that I have now.
And is there another downside for you of feeling like you're chasing, of feeling stagnant?
Yeah, I think it stems back to childhood, just growing up, just not having much, always trying to have just enough, versus living with, uh, the resources that we have available to us.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any other downsides you can think of for staying still?
Uh, Growth for my family is important. And I want to be that change maker for my family. So for my children, my girls, my son, my mom, showing her there was a different way. And I'm sorry I'm getting emotional about that, but it's very important to create generational wealth for my family.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to pause there with that pushing, Tiffany, and just inviting you to step back now, having explored those upsides of taking that bold step and the downsides of staying still. Are you seeing anything different now from how you felt about the start of the conversation?
Yes. Your first question when you talked about how do you rate your success and how do other people see your success? My mom would be like 100. And I'm sorry, I don't know why this is emotional, but I see myself as a 5, even though I've done all these great things. Being so hard on yourself kind of keeps you in this place.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing, Tiffany, for sharing your emotion and for sharing what you're committed to. I already see you as a celebrity chef, and how wonderful if you can tell the world that you are, so everybody can see you as a celebrity chef, and you can do that to create generational wealth for your family and to be an inspiration for Black women and other women in the industry.
Thank you, Natasha. And thank you, Joanna.
Thank you. Tiffany, I'm choked up, so it's rare for me. You have inspired me beyond belief.
Thank you.
That makes you a celebrity in my book.
Well, thank you.
So everybody, thank you, Natasha. This is a superb exercise. If you've got an opportunity or a challenge that you are facing now, the way to do this is to find a friend who knows you well, or who has the kindness and wisdom that Natasha has brought to the table here. Choose anybody who knows you, not your mom. She doesn't know you too well. And you do want a little bit of objectivity here. And the way to do this exercise is just to start with the upside, as Tiffany and Natasha did, and just push yourself to look for more and more 5 times. And then when you're ready to go to the downside, as Natasha did, of staying the course, of staying as is, and look only at the downside over and over and over. This is the opposite of what our brains normally do, unless you're an extreme optimist, in which case you do this naturally. And you know who you are if you're an extreme optimist. It usually takes you about a minute to love the idea and to want to go start to execute it. And if that's you, just sleep on it for 24 hours if you have that luxury, and try to look at the 2 gray boxes. But for the rest of us, let's use the red boxes. So thank you. That brings us to the final moments of our 30 minutes together. We've actually raced through 2 of the very, very many exercises that help us recenter ourselves in a moment of upset, and then to look at making change in a very bold and big way. Thinking back to what we did in tough moments, the story of the snake, is to first welcome in that situation, to accept it. Yeah, it sucks, but it's your situation. It's your reality in that moment. And when you welcome it in, when you allow yourself to feel the feelings that you have, they will, I assure you, pass through you. and they will be replaced by more feelings. And those will be replaced by more feelings. It's often the reason why people could be grieving and then laugh at a joke and then go back to grieving. It's hard to stop your feelings. It's impossible to stick a smile on your face when you're not feeling it. But when you accept how you feel, then you can, as Natasha guided us, reground yourself, recenter yourself physically, choose your go-tos, whether it's sipping tea as Natasha does, or taking a deep breath as I do, or something else, taking a walk outside, leaving the room for a moment. Go to those physical regrounding, and then mentally, emotionally, spiritually, try a question, try a mantra, become curious about the situation. Often, the easiest thing to do is to say, what's going on? I don't get it. I'm feeling a lot right now. What's happening for you? That's the first exercise. And then the second, which Tiffany was so gracious to do with us live, is to take a look at the upside of your challenge over and over again. Not allow your brain to go to the downside, which is so normal and so natural. And then flip it and look at that downside of doing nothing versus our normal upside of doing nothing. And then once you've got those two nailed, take a look, step back and say, am I ready to make a decision? If I'm not, I might want to get more upside by talking to people and get their input. And then I might want to get more downside by talking to people. Natasha, you show that you did that by talking to your husband in this situation, and you took your decision. Tiffany, you did it in a way by talking to Natasha and getting Natasha's input as well for you, and thinking about your children and thinking about your mom and thinking about your future generations. That all works to finish that exercise and make a bolder decision, going all the way back to what Rohini has inspired us to do, which is to think even more boldly, how can I change the situation? So we're almost out of time. We have 40 seconds left. Natasha, I know you might want to say a few final words.
Just what an absolute pleasure it's been. Tiffany, thank you for inspiring me, and thank you, Rohini, for giving us the opportunity. We do this work with leaders, with female leaders every day, and it's always super inspiring. I think, Tiffany, you tapped on one thing, which is that gap between our actual success and our own perceived success. That just unleashing that is the biggest opportunity for boosting our confidence, and with that, boosting what we can achieve in the world.
Thank you. Thank you. And I love it. If you have questions for us, just holler, and one of us, Stacy, Natasha, or I will be thrilled to try to help you with that. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna and Natasha, so much. I have been through the multi-day version of this program, and I am inspired every time that I get to hear you. So thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. And with that, I think we're going to head to our last session, and so let me turn it over to Adrienne.
All right, good day, everyone. Boy, what such an inspiring session that we just heard. I want to thank Rohini Day and the Let's Talk Women folks for putting this summit together. This has just been such an inspiring morning, and I'm really pleased about the session that we're going to hear now as we get into some of the solutioning for some of the issues that we're hearing about. And I think it's going to be really a great conversation. So as you probably heard earlier, I am the Chief Diversity Officer for Cisco, and Cisco is proud to be a sponsor of Let's Talk Change and to help celebrate and kick off Women's History Month. I'm not going to spend a lot of time covering my background. That's what we have LinkedIn for. I want you to hear from our panelists because they have some really great information to share with you. Each of these five amazing women have a story to tell. They represent phenomenal organizations that's really leading change for women in this space. Each one is blazing a path for advancement and development of professional women in various industries, but specifically hospitality and the food industry. Their work honors the unique contributions that women have to offer. And this summit is designed to be different and impactful. We want to focus on real solutions that will bring about real change. So please join me in welcoming Sarah Alter, Therese Gerhardt, Deborah Menchef, Joanna James, and of course, Rohini Day. So thank you all for taking the time to be here. It would be great for the audience to hear from each of you on the unique benefits and resources that your organizations offer to women, as well as the changes that are needed for the advancement for women in the future. As we know, women still earn only about 84% of what men earn for the same jobs. And according to a recent Korn Ferry report, while women make up 45% of the workforce in the country's largest firms, they only represent 25% of C-suite positions. So, and we heard some of the statistics earlier. The hospitality industry is dominated by women, particularly in professional roles, but we still have that glass ceiling in terms of being able to really break through and being in positions of decision-making, power, and influence. So tell us, what are your organizations doing to help close these and other gaps so that we can continue to propel women and help make progress in this space? So Sarah, I'm going to start with you first. Please introduce yourself and then tell us what you and your organization are doing to help women as we try to close some of these gaps around gender disparities.
Sure. Awesome. Well, thank you, Adrienne. So very glad to be here. Sadly, we're all needed out of necessity, and you have set the stage appropriately. I'm Sarah Alter, and I'm the CEO and president of Next Up. My why and our organization's why and mission is we're here to advance all women in business. And notice that I say all. And we'll tell you a little bit more about how that comes to life. We're a 501c3, we're a nonprofit, and we bring our mission to life in a couple of different ways. The first and foremost is through leadership development. Women aren't broken, they do not need to be fixed. And Joanna and Natasha just did a great job reinforcing, quite frankly, we are remarkable. But what we all can do and be is we can be a better leader. You know, these last 2 years with all that unfolded and challenged us, you know, it taught us, hey, we had to lead in a new and different way. We had to do our jobs in a different way. We had to lead our lives in a different way. And so our organization provides leadership development for women who are in a business environment. We also provide allyship training for males. And as others earlier had shared, you know, allyship is probably a core component for an organization that's going to have a culture that's diverse, you know, equitable, inclusive, where people feel like they belong and provides full accessibility. The second thing that our organization does on behalf of women and male allies is that we provide networking. And so we all know it, you know, in our careers, we've learned you're only as good and you're only going to be as successful as those relationships, those partnerships, that network that you have. And our organization, we have over 15,000 members across North America, the United States, and Canada. And we have over 1,000 volunteer leaders who run 22 of our regions. And they're all located in the major metro areas from coast to coast and up into Canada. And it's through these regions that leaders, again, both women and men, can scale and elevate and really strengthen both their personal and their professional networks. But the third thing that we provide, and it's probably the most important, because as I said, female leaders aren't broken. And yes, we need more male allies. What's typically broken is that corporate culture. You've got organizations where there's that lack of infrastructure. You don't have the right support services or policies or processes that set women up for equal and every opportunity for success in their career journeys. So we partner with over 900 companies. Half the Fortune 500 belong to our organization, and we provide them with the right insights and the right solutions that, one, create an allyship community. Two, that guides them in terms of how to better support all women. So in the spirit of generations, in the spirit of different diversities, in the spirit of just different communities, sexual identities and orientations, we are here to guide C-suite leaders to make sure they are doing all they can to set women up for success. So you can see we're much needed. And quite frankly, all of the other great leaders in their organizations that are going to be here today on this panel, they're needed as well. And it's going to take all of us to make sure that we do give women every and equal opportunity. In this near future, we are focusing on two core things. One, we have got to transform the norm, because the norm that took us into COVID, and then as in the 2 past years of COVID and all the other dynamics that unfolded taught us, the norm that took us into COVID is no longer going to work. It didn't work for women before COVID. It sure as heck didn't work during COVID. And so we are doing all that we can to transform the norm. And then that second thing, and I think somebody mentioned it earlier, that she session, oh yeah, it's real. That great resignation, it's real. But you know what? Next up is all about turning it into the she-covery. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to the next incredible leader that's going to share all about their organization.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Now we're going to turn to Therese. Therese, will you please answer the same questions? Tell a little bit about your organization and specifically what your organization is doing to close some of the gaps around gender disparities that we see.
Yes, I'd be honored. Once again, I'm Therese Gerhardt, President and CEO of the Women's Food Service Forum. A big shout out, thank you again to Rohini Day and the women of Let's Talk restaurateurs who are kicking us all off to Women's History Month. So it's a great opportunity for me to share how our non-for-profit organization, the Women's Food Service Forum, many who know us as WFF, is relentlessly serving to advance awareness and action to accelerate gender equity and, more importantly, advance all women leaders. It's actually incredible to me and very impressive that it was the food industry over 30 years ago who really was an enlightened group of diverse industry leaders who founded us and actually recognized that we need to improve representation at all levels across our industry. I'm certain it's one of the first industries that sat down and really had a conversation in recognizing the value and the need to advance it. It makes me very proud to be leading the efforts. In concrete ways, I can tell you that our work has always aimed to basically champion limitless opportunities for all women by providing unmatched leadership development, inspirational industry role models, meaningful network opportunities, and the ability for you to practice leadership skills in a very supportive environment. And for our advocacy community and our partners of WFF, we'd like to play a critical role as a convener of insights and solutions that will help these organizations build environments which we know is very important to help us all thrive as women. So as a WFF member, you gain an entire learning community focused on personal and professional development. We like to say it's all year long and all career long. We are your go-to resource for both practical content to build capabilities and inspiration to move you beyond all these obstacles we were talking about today together and to excel. And I wanted to share with you the concrete ways you're seeing on the screen, which is something Rohini wanted to make sure I did, which was focus on things that would directly help that we offer. The first thing I'm going to talk to you about is our WFF Connect. It's a virtual member portal. I like to say 24/7 access to give you robust virtual learning curriculum on a vast array of topics for personal and professional development, skills that are based on your personal and professional journey. Inside WFF Connect, you can leverage our leadership competency assessment that allows you to pull down and map out your own journey wherever you are in it personally and professionally to get your own customized roadmap for success. The next thing we like to talk about is what we're doing around year-round connections. And here we enable that through monthly virtual and live networking and development events that connect women to experts, role models in our industry, and each other. And finally, professional development, also offered virtual and in person through our leadership conferences and workshops that also provide professional development. We always match it with inspiration and, of course, networking opportunities. So again, tremendous programming, connectivity, there for you year-round through our WFF Connect portal, and there for you every month through different connection platforms. So how can you best leverage WFF as an organization? The best way to leverage us is obviously just go straight to visit WFF.org and become a member. Whether you already have a membership because your organization actually partners with WFF, or you can take advantage of a membership through what we consider a relatively nominal fee that'll give you full access to all things WFF we just discussed and put you in control of your development. If you're not a member, you can still test value of our membership by leveraging our monthly events, which you can simply access by following us on any of the social platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We market these monthly events, both our Twitter chats monthly, our lunch and learns monthly, and our WFF Exchange networks monthly, virtually, with links on those social platforms so you can participate and take advantage of those networks yourself. And I guess the final comment that I know you guys want us to touch on before we go into an open Q&A is, what do we think are some concrete near-term changes that have to happen? And I'd like to just say, I really want to hear us talking about bold steps we have to continue to take now that are addressing the burnout that many women are feeling across any industry. I think we need to make sure we're recognizing women and the individuals who are truly trying to drive and address these topics. And also, there takes a lot of deep cultural work necessary so we can get to a workplace where we all can feel valued. And there's a lot of simple changes that could be made in that space that I believe would be great conversation for today. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Therese. Thank you so much for that. Deborah, why don't we turn to you next?
Thank you so much. I so appreciate the opportunity to speak about Les Dames d'Escoffier International. To understand how we facilitate change, it helps to know how we came to be, as we were founded and built upon the very idea of change by an intrepid woman named Carol Brock. She was the food editor of the Sunday Daily News and was witness to the disparities between men and women in the food, beverage, and hospitality industries. It was 1973. And Carol convinced the All Men's Association, Les Amis Escoffier, to provide a charter for the creation of an all-women's organization of movers and shakers. Carol gathered 50 of the most prominent women she knew and founded the first chapter. By 1986, 5 chapters were formed, and Les Dames d'Escoffier International was created. So here we are. 36 years later, 2,400 women strong and 43 chapters in the US, Mexico, France, British Columbia, and London, and still counting. Each chapter is an independent 501c3. Each chapter finds its own way to create change by supporting, encouraging, facilitating, and mentoring women in their local communities. The chapters award scholarships to talented young women to enable them to fulfill their goals and dreams. They also spearhead fundraisers, run food banks and food donation programs, and teach about food and nutrition in their communities. At Les Dames International, we have impactful programs that support both members and non-members alike. Our legacy program, which is supported by the Julia Child Foundation, was established in 2009 with one goal in mind: to provide targeted mentorship opportunities for professional women in the food, beverage, and hospitality industries. Each year, we offer up to 9 long experience in agriculture, the culinary arena, wine, spirits, and food manufacturing, with the winners working alongside DOMS. This year, a newly formed grants committee is garnering grants that will enable this program to be expanded and enriched in meaningful ways. Our Women of Purpose Award, presented in partnership with Yeti, recognizes an exceptional DOM who has set herself apart by making a positive impact in a local or global community. Our first winner, Tolu Schuyler Quinn founded the Nashville Food Project, which is dedicated to bringing people together to grow, cook, and share nourishing food. In 2020, the Food Project served 200,000 community meals. We are ever grateful for Tolu's bold vision and passion for creating change. Our latest achievement is this year's creation of scholarships for impactful change, which are sponsored by the Wine Group. These scholarships recognize the inherent need for diverse leadership to spearhead and create impactful change in nonprofits and NGOs by enabling the recipients to educate, advocate, and activate. The winners of this scholarship must exhibit leadership skills and the desire to influence systems and communities for broad impact, as well as to demonstrate involvement in civic engagement and have a passion for social justice and positive change. So as you can see, from our very start, we've embraced change, and it resonates with us now more than ever. It is why we exist and why we matter as an organization. My goal is to see the continuing facilitation and support of change that matters in the food, beverage, and hospitality industries. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. And Joanna, tell us about MAP, what it stands for, and what you are doing to close the gender disparities that we see.
Well, thank you, Adrienne, and thank you, Rohini and Let's Talk Women for bringing us all together here with this summit. That's the spirit we need to create a sea change of equity and empowerment, which is what our mission is with MAP. It's about creating partnerships and supporting and empowering one another as opposed to working in silos. So what we do is provide a map for career advancement and creating financial independence. Because at the end of the day, that's how we're all really going to keep growing and evolving, is by getting to a point where we can take risks and we can go for it and dream big. So our tenets to help do that, number one is mentorship. I know when I was a first-time filmmaker, if I didn't know the questions to ask or the people who had already been there and done that to be generous of their time and their knowledge, there was no way I was going to make A Fine Line, which is the documentary that set this all in motion. So mentorship is something we really focus on, in the sense of not just sending emerging talent to a stage where they're peeling potatoes the whole time. No, it's about creating relationships that will build on-ramps. That's what we need more of, is on-ramps to get to access. And it's also very beneficial for the mentors because they're getting out of their networks, out of their comfort systems in place, and they're learning about a new way of seeing something, which can create aha moments and keep that innovative spirit going. Next is advocacy. So many today we're talking about the effect of the last 2 years when it comes to caregiving, and especially for childcare, and how that disproportionately affects working mothers and women. But we've been talking about this for years because the need for paid family leave, the need for affordable and accessible childcare, that is what is going to make a big difference for getting more women into leadership and creating more of these pathways towards advancement. And so that is one way we do this, is not just with Fortune 500 companies to really make sure that they're providing these benefits and then spreading it down in their communities, but small businesses and independent restaurants, that we have some that are doing phenomenal work in that regard, and they need to let the rest of our industry know it can be done. In an industry that has razor thin margins, if we have small businesses that are doing these things and incorporating these practices in their business model, then there's no excuse as to why it can't be done. Purpose. We've heard also earlier today that when we intrinsically know what matters to us, what feels good, and we want to do more of it, and it motivates our work, that's when we're able to really create change. And especially as chefs and restaurateurs, you know, there is no greater industry that touches every fiber of community, of society. Whether we're talking about sustainability, pathways towards immigration, providing second chances for those who are formerly incarcerated or former gang members, however you want to look at it, you are doing so much for your community as a chef or restaurateur, and especially women who are there always looking to uplift their communities. So what we do with MAP is provide more of a spotlight on those small businesses, and especially women who don't normally get the press and recognition that they deserve. Because the more we do that, the more we share their stories and their phenomenal work, the more we're going to hear these narratives, as opposed to the ones that contribute to burnout and not getting the job done. So purpose is something that is really at the center of what we do. One example is we work with a coffee roaster, and she works primarily with women coffee farmers in Ethiopia and Rwanda and Guatemala, who have then created co-ops to bring their children there to learn, who have childcare, who are now owning their coffee farms. And guess who is supporting them? The restaurateurs here in this country who use that coffee. So that is showing our global influence, and it culminates to our last P in MAP, which is the power of women, to see how we're all uplifting each other and empowering one another. And that's what we have to do, is create a good old girls club where we have access. That is the word I want to leave to all of you to really think about, is how we create more access to introductions, access to people who will share their knowledge so we can know what to ask and how to keep evolving and growing, access to the best of the people we can find, whether that's for accountants, lawyers, publicists, access to the biggest thing we need, which is capital. Because when we're financially independent, we're willing to take risks and chances and do something big. And when that happens, that's when we're making change. When we're depending on ourselves to uplift each other and to keep that spirit of camaraderie and supporting women, that's something we really need to do, is support one another. So that's the type of thing that MAP is really excited about. And we're especially excited to be able to provide these opportunities for more access and opportunity at our first conference coming up this April in Fort Lauderdale, the Restaurant Reset, where you will have access to industry experts, to people like Rohini, who we're so excited is going to be joining us, to have really inspiring discussions, panels, mentorship, speed dating. So we have to bring each other together, and now is the time, very much so. So thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. And thank you all for giving us that high level overview. We're short on time, but this is the Changemaker session. So I'm going to ask you all, we're going to do a speed round where, we've heard some great things. We heard about bold actions needed. We've heard about on-ramping. We've heard about access that's needed. I want you to just leave the audience with, we hear all these things, and companies are doing this, right? They're doing the mentorship, they're doing the networking, they're doing the sponsorships. But change is still slowly happening. What is the one thing, if you had the silver bullet to really accelerate change, would your organization double down on and expect to see significant progress made in the next 5 to 10 years? So we're going to start with you first, Sarah. What would that be? Give it to us straight, no chaser.
Oh yeah, you cannot underestimate the power of allyship. Both men helping women and women helping women, and then generational support as well.
Great, thank you. Let's go to you, Therese.
I'll just build to keep giving something different, actually. So in addition to allyship, which is such a big gap, especially between what people think it is that they're giving and what people are getting, it's simple things like checking just not your hiring, but your promotion and performance review processes to really test if your unconscious bias is actually out.
Got it. Thank you. Deborah.
For me, support is everything. It's one thing when you're working in a vacuum, working on your own, when you know that there are other people around you who have your back. There are other people around you who want you to succeed even more than they want themselves to succeed. I think that is a key to success.
Excellent. And Joanna.
I would say be bold and proactive. Don't be afraid to go for it. You're going to get 1,000 no's, but it's that one yes that will make a difference. Yeah. We as women-led organizations need to really enforce that attitude and like Deborah said, really support each other so we can help more women to get into leadership, which is what it's all about.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for just sharing just a tidbit of information. You all do some wonderful things to advance the progress for women. And as a DEI executive, helping to advance women in the workplace is definitely imperative to the work that I do every day and strengthening all of our companies. So, and I want to give a special thank you to Rohini Day and Let's Talk Women for creating this platform to celebrate women during Women's History Month. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I'm going to turn it right back over to you, Rohini.
Adrian, thank you so much. I'm energized. There was so much that I wrote down today, starting with Danny's, you're either a foe or a friend. Loved that. Loved Andrew's, you've got to hit it at the policy level. Very true. And we've got to try and figure out a way to do that. The Centered Leadership Remarkable Women program choked 500 of us with Tiffany, and the upside downside matrix, I wrote it down even though I have it on PowerPoint. Love that. Thank you, Natasha and Joanna. And we still have Jose Andres' segment coming, so please stay tuned for that. Adrian, next up, Women's Food Service Forum, MAP, LADAMS, thank you for sharing your resources. We hope all the women listening will leverage it. And it is all about amplifying all our resources. This is not about turf war. It's not about my organization versus yours. It's about pushing out everything that's available to everyone. It is also about completely out of the box models. What we're doing now is not working. It is not. So I hope we're all bold in taking risks and trying new and different models. In closing, I would love to say that I want to thank all our Let's Talk Women, 600 of us across 13 cities. We are so energized about change. Everything we do is out of hide. We don't have a corporation. We don't even have an executive assistant, and we don't have overheads. Any support to us goes straight to our Let's Talk Women restaurateurs and entrepreneurs. We are employers, and we are thrilled to continue the dialogue and the celebration with our International Women's Day dinners. So we've got 12 of those around the country on March 8th. And you can see the cities on there. Go to our website, back your women restaurateurs, celebrate them, join us. Thank you to our sponsors, Cisco again, IFMA, Toast, Alta, and most of all, thank you to McKinsey for making this whole forum happen, supporting us, and being the intent behind it. So with that said, I would love to
just finish speaking a few minutes ago.
I'm not sure who's unmuted, but with that said, I would love to segue to the Jose Andres segment and his perspectives as he's in Ukraine, helping out the 500,000, 1 million refugees who are being bombed as we speak in the safety of our homes. So thank you again for being with us today. Be part of the conversation, and over to the Jose Andres segment. Delighted to welcome Jose Andres, who does not need an introduction, but in the spirit of being redundant, twice Time Magazine Most Influential 100 People medal by President Obama for his humanitarian efforts, at the iconic Think Food Group, as well as his World Central Kitchen. Now, if that is not change, then it's very difficult to define change. So Jose, given that our topic is how do you revolutionize change within yourself, share with us a little bit about what was your inflection point? How did you come about to make so much change happen? That's a tough question, but in your words.
Listen, Rohini, I mean, thank you for having me on this gathering of a woman, influential woman, and having this honest conversation about what are we missing in our communities, in society, in the workforce, to give women probably the level field to be part of a community and a society that they rightfully are part of. I always say, by watching my mother, she was a nurse, sometimes she worked in 2 jobs, and sometimes I remember that I realized my mom was not working in 1 or 2 jobs. She was the one working 24/7. About what change, if any, I've done. Quite frankly, I look myself at the mirror and I can tell you all the things I didn't do well yet, or all the things I get more credit than the credit I deserve. But one thing I know is I have a lot of enthusiasm. And Winston Churchill said that success was measured in going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. But let me tell you one thing is so very important. I always say that we are only as good as the people we have around us. And I've been having an unbelievable support all my life. My mom, which not necessarily, maybe that's a relationship many of us share, mother and daughters or mother and sons. My relationship with my mother was never the easy one. I'm not going to get into details. My mom was a wonderful woman that gave her best out every single day of her life to her family and to others. But that didn't take away from me loving her and knowing that I am who I am thanks to many of the traits I have of being persistent is because my mother, I know, gave them to me and showed them to me. My mom studied to be a nurse, pregnant of my 4th brother. Believe me, taking care of 3, going through school to become a nurse, not because she had nothing else to do, but because a new salary was necessary in the house. This showed me the hard work and ethics and commitment to make whatever it had to be done to keep the family moving. We were a working class family. It's not like we were hungry or anything. I live a very good life, but my family needed that. And my mom showed me that the strength.
Our philosophy is a lot of change comes from ownership. And the inspiration is for women to get to levels of scale and ownership and to grow their businesses. That's the whole purpose of Let's Talk Women. And we find that if you look at our industry as a mirror on society, it's not lack of entrepreneurial spirit. There's 40% of restaurants are owned by women, but they tend to be incredibly underfinanced, small scale, and on the fringe. I mean, just look at mega restaurateur groups. If you were to look at them, very few are owned by women, if at all. I love the points you raised about persistence, enthusiasm, not taking a no. And a lot of that seems to be bred in you through your childhood. Invaluable lessons, right? So we can change society with one generation if we raise our daughters well to be fierce and to take on challenges. But what is it that you think the men in our industry can do to also make the playing field level the way you phrased it?
And we need to start thinking out of the box. I always say that flat organizations will help make decision-making more participative. So this will allow more participation, if you want, of women, because if it seems many of the positions at the top levels, that's a matter if it's a big organization, even you mentioned that big percentage of women own their own businesses. It seems it's a male-driven society. From big organizations to smaller, it's always men at the top. If we could keep creating pyramidal structures, there'll be always a man at the top, no matter what. Still, it's okay. Somebody has to be the boss. But if you make flatter organizations, you will make a more diverse opportunity for everybody to be more participative in the decisions that can be made in the shaping of a small or big company. A big part will be access. We can talk about access to capital. I know the SBA is trying to do a big push in different administrations. This needs to be bipartisan because there are women on both sides of the equation, in the Republican side and in the Democrat side. So let's make access to capital easier, access to credit easier, access to relief as well, which has been an issue during this pandemic. We can be, all of us, putting gentle but nice pressure on financial institutions to do that, to make sure government agencies have a much more focus on women that I repeat, they are the ones that carry more than one job, even if they don't want it. Because even if they don't want it, they take their responsibility, and that should be rewarded. What you did at the James Beard Foundation's first time you and I met, when you were precisely thinking ahead and thinking forward, let's make sure we mentor young women to, from the very beginning, they have a very good preparation so they can start at the level playing field with any other men out there. So women take care of their children forever on behalf of all men and all of society. And therefore, anything we do to lessen the burden, to almost bring it down to zero and facilitate the possibility of every woman to reach its maximum potential, and where raising the family is not what brings them down of trying to reach its maximum potential, that will go a long way. So again, it's very direct issues that we can be talking, but in my restaurant, maybe can always do more. I don't remember exactly, but we have very good, many good weeks of maternity leave that is part of everybody coming to work, etc., etc., etc. Facilitating woman life in the family and in the business, and not making it a burden, but making it an opportunity, I do believe is what every business, small or big, but also supported by the federal government, is what we can be doing to achieve a more equal opportunity for every citizen of planet Earth, woman and men.
Jose, we could go on. A lot of this rests on the government, right? Childcare support, all of that. So that is at the policy level. And it's very vital, no question. Is there anything the successful male restaurateurs in our industry can do to change the equation, almost as a model for other sectors?
Obviously, we all have a chance. Listen, I'm a dad. I have 3 daughters. My wife went to university. I never did. For me, it was an amazing thing to see my first daughter graduating from business school. This was huge. She's working now in New York. I cannot believe I have a 23-year-old that she grows so quickly and so fast. And now she is working in a startup and she's thriving and she's loving it. And my 2 other daughters have so far fairly clear ideas of what and they want to do. So I know families obviously are a very good starting point to put a young woman in the right path. In my case, it's not so much me who is inspiration, but in my family, who is the rock, is really my wife, who is the one that moves my 3 daughters forward. I mean, I try to try to learn how to be a grown up. Imagine trying to learn how to be a dad. I'm still learning how to be a good dad. But the end begins everywhere. I always say that we are all as good as the people we have around us. I do believe it's very, very, very important that we all share with others, in this case with women, the things we know, and that we allow ourselves to say, we are here to help you, we are here to empower you, we are here to share with you what you may need in your early years of formation. But I think women like you too, and that's what you are doing, it's very important that we are all putting ourselves out there precisely, not only thinking at 10,000 feet above ground, but with boots on the ground, making sure that if your success is the success of others, let's make sure that every other woman around you has the same chance of success as you do. But again, I'm not putting the burden on women. I'm saying this is the job that all of us, we need to be doing more to again, equal down. If we can level down the playing field, this is a very big achievement. But I know that takes more than words to make it happen.
Deeply grateful for your time.
Let's talk change and let's talk women. Thank you for your leadership on behalf of all of us.
Rohini, you're muted.
I think if we can put on the closing slide again, and I want to thank everyone who stayed through that. It's amazing. We still have well over 200 of us. Thank you for joining our Let's Talk Change Summit. Huge thank you also to Destinations International and to CH Photography for crafting all our collateral as well as that video. Let's continue the dialogue, be part of our dinners, and this is the Let's Talk salute to everybody. Thank you.